afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a very special Double Barrel Gaming Presents South of Midnight review and discussion. Obviously, I was literally when we started muted and off camera, but here we are, ladies and gentlemen. I listen. This is going to be a fun 45-minute to an hour conversation. As you can see, I'm running solo. And that's not because we couldn't get anyone here. A lot of people's schedules didn't match up with, today's live stream. And of course, like I did with Avowed, I'm going to spend time breaking down exactly what South of Midnight is. We're going to break down the pros and cons that I came through, and during my playthrough, which was about just a pinch over 20 hours, because I always spent extra time looking for things. I have a bunch of detailed notes. We're going to get into it. I also have a lot of community questions. And of course, I want to thank the near 100 people that are here, because obviously the entire industry, the podcast industry, is doing what I'm doing right now. The embargo has lifted officially at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There's also going to be people playing the game because early access starts today at, of course, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time if you paid for the $10 upgrade. And listen, do I sound low? Let's see. Let's try. How do I sound now? Do I sound fine? Let's see. Let me just ask the chat, because Music72 said I sounded a little bit low. Anybody in the chat, just give me a quick mic check to let me know. Okay, so I am good. Thank you very much, Gray Fox. Super appreciate that. Psychonauts, welcome, brother. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, if you do drop super chats, I will try to respond immediately, so they're not all at the back end of it. So, of course, if you have a question, you don't need to drop a super chat, folks. FYI, this isn't Ask Me Anything. That means that if you do have a question and you'd like me to answer it, I am going to do my best to answer it and not spoil anything. So if you have questions, by all means, ladies and gentlemen, please drop your question here. Some people did already on Twitter. If you did see the post from the other day, and of course this morning's post, and you did drop a question, I will try to address that live on the air. But this is such an honor. And of course, before we get into the festivities and we start talking about what South of Midnight is, and ultimately my score at the back end of today's podcast, I do want to thank Compulsion Games and, of course, Xbox Game Studios for allowing Double Barrel Gaming to review this game. Now, there is, it's funny, there is no one to bounce off of. So, of course, I'm going to be earnest and I'm going to be transparent with you. With me, I'm still, even after doing this for 7+ years, always get butterflies. Like right now, I have butterflies, like, because it's not like I've never been on the mic before, but there is a sense of responsibility, and I do not take any of that lightly. Again, whether a game is good, bad, or somewhere in the middle, when that is bestowed upon us, we take that incredibly serious, because this is someone's work. This is someone. This is a team that worked on this for years, and they are then taking their baby and they're handing it to us, and they're expecting us to be fair, transparent, and honest. And that's what we're going to do here today. Again, I just want this to be clear that none of the reviews that we do here at Double Barrel Gaming are driven by anything that we are sent either through a game code, DLC, or even collector's edition. We've been lucky enough to get a couple of those. Those do not drive the score. But we do have a bunch of pros for South of Midnight, and there are a few cons in there that I'd like to see improved. Now, I just want, again, just to be transparent and clear, there's nothing broken about this game whatsoever. The cons that we will get into once we get to that section of the podcast are things that could have been done better but are not broken, and things that I think that they can fix in an update. And we'll get to all of that. And of course, back end of the show, folks, we're going to give you a score. Now, of course, I have notes. So Being that I'm solo, I have to immediately go to the notes, and I'm going to pull myself off of screen, and I'm going to be reading, from the notes, because obviously there's a lot of information here. But let me just welcome in once again everyone for taking the time to stop by Double Barrel Gaming and check out South of Midnight's review and discussion. Because again, like I said in the opening, there are many, many content creators that are putting their works out there, either through live streams, through gameplay streams on Twitch, and of course through video format. We know that the Iron Lords have one. We know that C Money and Doodle have theirs as well. We know King David has his dropping at 12:30, 12 o'clock for members of his channel. So there's a lot of people that are going out there and doing their due diligence to deliver reviews and hot take opinions about South of Midnight. Now, let's just open up with the simpleness of it. What is South of Midnight, ladies and gentlemen? Well, what I can tell you before we get into my breakdown of what exactly South of Midnight is, I kind of want to start off with what it isn't. Now, South of Midnight is not God of War. I want that to be clear. South of Midnight is not Horizon Zero Dawn. It is not Elden Ring. It is a story-driven, adult-themed adventure game that offers action, arena-based combat with a heavy dose of traversal. The music, the characters, the stop-motion animation are a huge part of what makes South of Midnight so special. And the best comparison, and this is again talking with Kay Asante this morning, going over our notes, because they're going to be doing their breakdown in video format as well later on, where a bunch of us are going to sit down with Kay Asante and we're going to discuss our likes and dislikes of South of Midnight and where we want to see the franchise go. There's a great way to describe this, because there's a question that I got, and of course we're going to get to the questions momentarily. The best way I personally can describe South of Midnight from a gameplay and storytelling thought is it really is a mix of Hi-Fi Rush and Hellblade 2 specifically. Now, I know that it looks incredibly different. Each one of these games has their own art style. Obviously, Hi-Fi Rush is an animated cel-shaded type of game that uses combos and arena-based combat, as well as this very unbelievable story. Right? Hellblade 2 has combat, but it has sound as its motivation. It has visuals as its motivation, trying to tell a story about someone suffering from psychosis. And again, those two games, even though they are very different from South of Midnight, when you play South of Midnight, you're going to get a feel of these two other titles. There's another title, though, ladies and gentlemen, that I want to add to the mix here, and that's Psychonauts 2. Psychonauts 2 had incredible platforming, had incredible traversal, incredible characters, more specifically. One of the things that was the standout that almost was left off of the gameplay itself were the boss battles. And some of the boss battles here in South of Midnight are traditional. There's a health bar, right, that you have to chop down and eventually beat the boss. And that is your traditional way of you versus the antagonist for that level. But there are other ones where there is no combat at all, and it's done through very emotional storytelling. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I could speak for myself, and just to be super clear here, folks, there is no spoilers here. Nothing is going to be ruined for you. The gameplay that you're seeing is super early. You'll see some combat, but there's no voices, there's no sound, so there's nothing going to be spoiled for you. But I do again want to just make this clear that this is not a God of War type of game. This is a story-driven game that has some heavy, and I mean heavy adult themed content. And I don't mean like in a sexual manner or anything like that, but there for each individual person that I've spoken to, right? There were certain chapters that hit each one of us in a different way. So for me, and again, this is where I'm going to be a bit transparent as glass. I talk about my brother Neo Mental because he's my life. But I have another brother who I do not speak to, and it's been that way for a long, long time for a lot of reasons that I will not be public about. But the second chapter in South of Midnight, and I'm getting emotional. I'm trying not to. I'm trying to keep it in. Got me to tears for my own personal demons, my own personal hangups with the relationship that I had with my brother. And you know, this game hits you in the heart, man. I got to tell you, it does do an incredible job of taking a stop motion animation that almost looks claymation like. Like I said, the best way to describe this is like Coraline, one of my favorite films. And the storytelling is so strong and so deep that each person that I spoke to, and again, no names here, because we're gonna let the other creators tell their stories. Everyone had a different take at a different chapter for a different reason. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what makes Out to Midnight so goddamn special. So let me just go into some of the questions. Let me try and compose myself here. So Asus 352 on Twitter. Asus, thank you for not only following me on Twitter, because nothing is owed, but thank you for dropping a question. And Asus 352 asks this: does the game have a little Psychonauts feel in terms of storytelling? Could a sequel or spin-off happen? Wow, that's a wonderful question. I kind of, answered it, but I will go into more detail, Asus. So yes, it does have a bit and a feel for Psychonauts, and I think where it gets it from is from its traversal. It does have that Psychonauts feel, because Psychonauts had a very interesting and different way of the way the character moved around the board, right? But I think where it really gets into the Psychonauts 2 realm is how the characters, that is not you, that's not Hazel. Hazel is the protagonist of South of Midnight. There are so many memorable characters that play a tremendous part in how this story is told, and it's never done in a uninteresting or I don't really care about it, we just needed to put someone in here kind of a way. The characters that you meet along the way play a massive part in the storytelling, and they're all unique in the way that they speak. They're all unique in the way that they are adapted to the screen, and they're all visually so much different than one another. And again, we're not going to name the names here of what these characters are, because what I refuse to do is spoil anything. I really want everyone that's here today to go, whether you're playing now, you play after, you watch us on the back end. We're just happy that you're going to get to experience something that we were privileged to be able to play early. Not only early here at home, but we got invited to a Microsoft event with Compulsion Games. We're a small channel, folks, so we do not take any of this stuff for granted, and we are incredibly grateful for it. So Aces, I hope that answers your question. Let's see, do I have any others? So you know what, let me just go to the chat real quick and just take a quick look. Let's see. Roshan, I don't want to make you cry, brother, but I'm not gonna front. I was close. I was super close. I was trying to hold it in and taking that, that gulp, so I don't, tear up on live on the air. So listen, folks, what I'm gonna do is we got almost 300 people here. Again, I want to thank everybody for taking the time, because there are so many creators that you could be watching, but you're here. And Mrs. Boom and I are very grateful for that. Um, yes, Satness, the game does have a jump button. It does. Yes, you do jump quite a bit. Casual K, it asks, is it fun? You know what, Casual K? I'm gonna address that. Indeed, it is. But it's not fun in a way where, if you were trying to compare this solely to Hi-Fi Rush, for instance, Hi-Fi Rush is the story is told in a very, very artistic way, where the character itself is funny, right? Chai is a funny character. Um, and what's happening to Chai and how you progress through his story, there are some funny parts. So the gameplay loop for specifically Hi-Fi Rush is addicting, especially when you start getting into the combos. There are no combos here. You're not racking up 17, 18, 25 hits and you're getting an achievement for it. That's not the way this game works with its combat. There are combat moves. Um, is the game fun ultimately? Yes, it is. It is fun, but it is not funny. And I don't know if that answers the question fully or it doesn't. Are there funny conversations between Hazel and the catfish? 100%. The voice acting plays such a big part, and it's so authentic. And when you compile the authenticity of the Deep South and the story that they're telling and the lore that they're specifically used that they're pulling from. This is actual lore from the Deep South that they've pulled from, and then you mix that with the music. Very powerful stuff. And again, there are things that you can ultimately miss if you are there's a story that you can follow. You can play the game start to finish. You put your 14 hours in and you go, right? Some people like myself, I'm closer to a day, because there's a lot to do, there's a lot to read, there's a lot to collect. Um, Let me see. I'm just going to go right back to some of the notes now. Again, this is just a description of what we're dealing with, what you should expect when you're playing the game. The game itself is set in a gothic fantasy American Deep South setting, right? I think that's blatantly obvious. And obviously, South of Midnight follows Hazel's journey after a hurricane devastates a particular part of her life. Her mom goes missing, and now she's on the hunt to try and find her mom. Uh, During this journey, this is where her powers blossom. She's never knew she had these powers, and as you progress through the story, and as you fight bosses and fight these creatures they're called haints, um, you will level up your character. It's when I say it's light RPG, it's incredibly light. There are multiple move sets that you can get, and it's again the way that you upgrade your powers are by spending time and searching for for they're called, okay, so let me make sure I get it correct. There is a level up system. Like when I say it's light RPG, I mean that there are things to do and things to collect. There are collectibles. Now, the collectibles come in many forms, and the way the collectibles are broken down are by letters that further the story. That and each individual chapter. I probably should have started with this. now that I'm thinking about it. Each chapter is telling a specific story, and it all works together by chapter 14. So when you get to chapter 2, it's telling a story about these two brothers. When you get to chapter 12, for instance, chapter 12 is is heavy. It's I'm not, again, no spoilers here, folks. Super, super heavy shit. And it's told with class and respect to the story and the characters involved. Throughout the game, throughout the levels, the way the levels are broken down is the traversal in this game is fast. It is really, really well done, especially when you start leveling up. As you progress through the game, you get these additional powers that make you fast, and the platforming is really good. Now, the platforming is not perfect. It's one of my half points that came off, and I will break down again when we get to the pros and cons exactly what I'm talking about. But as you traverse this world, which by the way is gorgeous, it is stunning to look at. The sounds of the chirping frogs and the bees buzzing. I do really want people to play the game however you see fit. But if you want all of these sounds, like the croaking of the frogs and the chirping of the birds and the growling of the haints, you should play with headphones. And I really meant that when I talked about my earlier review of Hellblade 2. You cheat yourself out of what this game has to offer through its sound. The sound in South of Midnight is incredible. And when you encompass that with the music, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. It really is. But through each level, there's a lot of platforming. There's a lot of puzzles that you solve. But there's also how you level up it becomes an important part. Now, by the time I got to the 12th chapter, I had leveled up everything. So if you go looking for what they call it's floofs, and these floofs, they're unmistakable. They're like these white balls of light, and they come in they vary in how much of the are each one. So the bigger ones are 20 points, the smaller medium ones are 10, and then there are the smaller ones. And the smaller ones, some are hidden behind walls, some are hidden under metal panels that blew off the roof of people's homes, or some are just out in the open. So it's 5, 10, and 20. The more you collect of these floofs, the more that you level up your character. And the way that it's spread out, you can go probably through the game and level up just kind of by just progressing. But I think that at the end of the game, where it gets kind of difficult, that the last boss was a fight, and I died quite a bit. Um, I would say that is so. If the question comes up and says, "Boom, is it necessary to level up?" My answer is going to be yes, if you want to enjoy this game. And I played it on normal. Again, I'm closer to a day's worth of play. I don't have the exact numbers. I will get it for you live on the air because it wasn't available because it wasn't up on Xbox, so I couldn't look at the gamer card. I'll do that in a quick second. But yeah, go hunting for these flukes. And when you see something that you think you can get to, try and get to it, because there's a lot of hidden stuff here, whether it be the flukes themselves, whether it be areas that you have to clean out. You have to cleanse these areas, and in cleansing these areas, it opens up other parts of the world that if you didn't cleanse them, you wouldn't be able to get to, and you would miss on these flukes. So let me just, you know what? Let me just go back to the chat, and I apologize if someone asked a question. So the Black Knight asks a great question, and he says, "Would you say that there are any missable collectibles, like you can't backtrack to old areas?" Okay, that's a great question. I was say Black Viking, Black Knight. See, like, right, look at the screen in front of you. That's what one of the floofs looks like. That is one of the bigger ones. That's the 10. Um, and you'll see them throughout the gameplay. Again, folks, no spoilers here. So you can replay chapters. Like if you go into the settings and you want to, like for instance, as you progress through the particular chapter, let's say for instance it's chapter 3, and you press the start button, it'll tell you how many floofs are in that level and how many you found. So let's say for instance there are 220 and you found 150, you want to go back. You can replay that level. You can go back in certain aspects. Like for instance, this is I don't want to use the word open world because it's going to give the wrong impression. It's not an open world game, it's an open area. And the areas that you are in are pretty big. And depending on how far you go and what you go looking for, like you're going to see the way I play. And this is probably the best advice I can give anyone. So when you hit the right stick in, your path where you're supposed to go is going to look like a white line. And that's the weaving that she sees. Those are the strands that Hazel sees. And it'll tell you the direction to go. For me, how I play the games is I go in the opposite direction of wherever the strands are telling me to go, because that's where you find all these secrets. That's where you find these hidden um, arena-based haint, where you're fighting the haints, and of course where you're also going to find a lot of the floofs. So the original gamer says the environments look cool. The environments are super varied. Yes, it's in the south, so it's hot. And you're going to see a lot of sun glare. You're going to see giant peaches like you see here. And obviously, I couldn't get there, so I fell into the thing. You will be brought back to where you jump, but you'll be missing some health. Um, I mean, the scenery is just incredible. The attention to detail, like even like for instance, there's like a section where you saw like how they were farming honey, and you saw like the beehives, and if you stood there and you just watched, you'd see the bees flying around. Like it's incredible how much of how much detail they went into. Let me see. Let me see if there's any other question. Would you? Okay, so we got that one. All right, so here's Sith Lord, vintage Sith Lord, by the way. Asks a great question. How is this compared to We Happy Few? Do you feel like they've improved since being acquired by Microsoft? So here's the thing. They made 2 games prior to this. Contrast was one of them that launched on the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 when those consoles launched. And then We Happy Few came out, which was early access, and this is before they were purchased by Microsoft. I can absolutely tell you that just look at the screen. There are a couple of points of contention here, Sith Lord, that come to mind regarding their acquisition or being now a part of Xbox Game Studios. Money does what you're seeing on your screen. The graphics here are undeniably gorgeous. Uh, there's going to be some people that aren't, and again, they're not wrong. If you don't like the stop animation that you're seeing, the stutter, you can shut that off. You can shut off the motion blur. I did not play that way. I simply played with what they presented to me because, like I said, not only am I a fan of video games, behind the scenes and privately, I'm like a huge film guy. I follow the trades. I read Variety all the time. I watch a lot of podcasts that talk about film. And one of my favorites, I should say, animation style is Coraline. I've mentioned that multiple times. and this gives me the sense of that. So I did not want to shut it off. Now, will I play through it again? Yes, I will. Just same way I'm going to play through Avowed totally different. I will play through South of Midnight differently. Um, so let me just see if there are any additional questions. So Mac City Entertainment. Well, welcome to the program, brother. Great to see you here, and thank you for dropping a question. He says, "New game plus, or do we gotta wait?" I don't want to spoil anything, so I don't know if there is a new game plus because there was an update, and I have not been back to it from when it went live. So I'm not sure if that was added or it wasn't. I know that you can go back in and replay any chapter you want to play. Um, let's see. Okay, so Be Nice asked a great question, and this is where we get into some of the cons. Is there anything you see that would indicate patch updates or bug fixes? Well, I don't know if you guys and gals remember. I've been playing South of Midnight, the third chapter, for a while, which is what I've been allowed to show. It's already been out there, so I've had permission to show it. So one of the yeah, I guess you can call it a bug. One of the animation bugs that I came across while I was previewing the game was when Hazel got too close to an edge after jumping, there would be a stutter where she would slip. She would slip and fall backwards. And some of the platforming, and again, the game is not broken in any way. And most of the platforming is solid. There is a specific point, which again, I took off a half point for it, where some of the instances, like you see, she almost slipped. And when you get too close to an edge, sometimes she falls back, and they start you right there. And when you start right there again, you got to be quick with the jump button to try and get out to do a double jump. So it doesn't. It's happened to me only a couple of times, but it doesn't happen often. But it does happen. So I had it's part of the review. I gotta make mention of it. I think that can be fixed with an update because it's something where the character itself hits a platform and slips off. And I don't think it's meant to do that. I think that could be a potential, an update, for instance. I don't want to say a bug because it's not broken. It's just that it needs I don't know if they would how they would widen the code so she didn't slip off. I'm not a programmer, folks. I don't know, but that is definitely one of the half points that I took off. Let's see. Let me look for the again, folks. If you asked a question that's it's early, you gotta remember I'm solo, so I'm trying to do the best I can here. Drop your question like now, so I can, of course, try and answer it. Uh, Boom Z Black Rider, I love you, brother. He says Boom needs to get good. I did pretty well in this game. Again, the game is not overly difficult, but some of the hints that you come across are tough. And I will say this, FYI, folks, don't button mash. You will lose. The areas that you get locked into, to clear out, whether it be to cleanse that area to move forward in the story or to find additional collectibles, can be difficult. I would say make sure that you understand the combat because the combat there's a learning curve, folks. There's no 100 hit combos in this thing. You're not seeing a combo meter rack up as you hit these hints. It's just not the way it is. So Game on Jesse asks a great question. Is there an easy mode? There are at least 5. There might be 6 different modes in regards to its difficulty. There's even a story mode where you can remove the combat altogether, making it basically a walking sim. If you don't want any of the hate combat, and again, like I said, honestly, folks, it does get difficult at times. If you don't look for the floofs you're going to feel underpowered. I'm going to tell you that right now. And again, you get floofs by fighting these creatures, these haints in this arena-based combat. It's very similar to what you did the combat in Hi-Fi Rush. But again, if I'm being honest, you do yourself as the player a disservice if you don't take the time to level up. And there's not a lot to do like in regards to leveling up. There are a decent amount of powers, and there are a decent amount of moves. If you don't level them up and you go into especially certainly during the later levels where you're locked into a smaller space with these haints and you're fighting 5 or 6 of them at a time, and some of them are huge, so you'll feel like you're underpowered. Again, you'll level up by traditionally playing the game. If you want to go in feeling a little bit OP, even like for me, like I had every power by the 12th chapter, and in chapter 12 and 13, I died quite a bit. Now, and again, it's not grossly hard, but it's challenging. Let's just say it's the best way I can say it's challenging. Um, let's see. So the Black Knight asks additional question: do you get more than enough floofs to max it out? Yes, you absolutely. Like for instance, there are a subset of floofs per chapter. And like for instance, chapter I'm spitballing here. I don't have the exact number, but let's say you start chapter 4 and you press the start button. You're going to see that it has 220 floofs available. And as you progress through the story, it'll tell you through the chapter how many floofs you got. And I've gotten, in several of the chapters, all of them. And in some of them, I missed some, but not by much. It was usually by 5 or 10, maybe even 20 at points. But for the most part, I got all of the floofs, and I went looking for them. Now, your health bar, and I'm glad you bring this up because I would have actually forgotten this. Your health bar and how you level up are each block of a particular chapter. Now, some chapters bleed into one another, meaning that you'll start chapter 1, you'll play through chapter 2, and some of chapter 2's story bleeds into chapter 3, right? There are these giant, unmissable from the eye, green crystals. And in order to get your maximum health, which there's a 100-point achievement for, which I got, is you have to find 3 of these crystals. And you level up your health 3 different occasions throughout this 14 chapter story. And understand something, these are hidden collectibles. You have to go looking. Now, I think you'll find one in the beginning just to kind of get you on the path of, hey, this is what upgrading your health looks like, and this is what it's a long-aided. Think of Sonic's the green gems. They're just skinny and long. They're very hard to miss from visual standpoint, meaning that if you're looking for them, it's not hidden behind a bush that you can't see. You'll see the green. It's an emerald green looking elongated gem. So if you go looking for them, you will find them. But how you get there can sometimes be a bit challenging. You have to definitely platform, and again, the platforming is really good. The platforming, like I told you about earlier, is that there are some instances where I have fallen off or fallen back, and it's not frustrating. It's honestly not frustrating, but what it is it could be annoying, I guess is the best way to say it. So I'm hoping that they can update that through a patch. Let's see. Any other questions here? Okay, so Master BKB Lubu says, "I love when a game gives me a challenge. How hard is the hardest difficulty. Boom. So I played it on the medium uh, set. There is a super ridiculous hard version of this, and I have not played it, but I can tell you that some of the boss fights died and had to start over because some of the bosses these and then we haven't even really talked about the boss battles. We've talked about the Haints. The Haints, again, this is where it's a small criticism. It's not that the game is broken, but for me personally, I wish there would have been more variants or variations of the Haints. There's about 6 of them, and they go from your standard one, which you'll see me fighting, to like Hulk-sized ones. And when you are in, because you got to remember, these arena-based things, they close behind you. When you like, you'll walk up to one, and you can see it in the distance. It looks like black smog that's like kind of funneling into the sky, and you know that's where you have to go. You'll see like a translucent veil, like a spiritual veil that you walk through. And once you walk through that veil, you get locked into this arena. And sometimes that arena is packed with Haints, as much as I've seen as many, for me, as 6 at a clip. And some of them are pretty sizable. So you have to, again, this game is not a button mashing type of combat. Yes, you're going to be pressing the buttons, but you're going to be moving. You're not going to be standing still. And again, as you see me, I'm sure that, again, I'm not paying attention to the screen, but Hazel boogies. She moves quick. And you'll see that like when you're about to get hit, there is going to be an indicator that something's behind you. You can lock on to a particular, Haint. I didn't like the lock on, because once I got locked onto it, I couldn't. The camera would turn with you locked onto it if you were trying to fight someone else. So I didn't do a lot of the lock on stuff. So Jesse James says story mode for him. Yeah, I don't think that I don't think you go wrong playing this anyway. If the story mode is what you're here, if you're here for the tales, um, there's nothing wrong with it. I think you're going to be engrossed by the platforming, which is really good, except for the one hiccup that I told you about with because traversing around these giant maps, unbelievable, super quick. And like I said, as you can see on the screen, these are the standard Haints. They're the lesser of some of the big ones that you fight. I don't think I have any footage with some of the bigger ones. And of course, I'll leave you. I didn't, this is a non-spoiler, conversation. But look at that, folks. 45 minutes. Wow. I guess that red pill that I took this morning to go long and strong worked out, because normally I can't talk this long without losing my voice. I know that's a giant pause there. Pause. But yeah, we're probably going to go about an hour. So Mac22 asks how long the game is. So again, this is based on Compulsion Games' own words. An average playthrough is between 12 and 14 hours. For me, I'm closer to a day. And you know what? Let me just... I hate using my phone live on the air, folks. I really, really do. But I could not get the particular stats while before 12 o'clock, because it wasn't live. So let me just see if I can get into, and I can tell you exactly. Oh, for the love of Joe. Okay. All right. I will try and find exactly how long I've been playing the game, but it was closer to a day based on, just my memory. Let me see. So you know what? Give me 1 second, folks. I want to get the actual particulars. Okay, so let me see if I can pull it up, because again, I couldn't earlier. Okay, yeah, I got it. I got my progress, folks. So here's my stats. 17 hours, folks. I thought it was a little bit longer, so it was I beat it in 17 hours and 1 minute. I have 31 of the 40 achievements, 635 achievements out of 1,000. I will go back into it and try and get 1,000 out of 1,000. So for me, it took, and mind you, I went looking for things. So depending on you as the player, you might get closer to 20 hours. You might get closer to 12 hours. I don't think that there's a wrong way to play this game. I just don't think that there is. Um, I think that if you don't go out of your way to gain some of the powers later on, it might be a little bit more difficult for you. And some of the Haints, like I said, they are tank sized. So Tyrant Entertainment is asking, is it good though? Oh yes, this is a unbelievable good game for a multitude of reasons. Yes, there are some points that I took away from it, some half points, which again we will get towards, in the next 10 minutes or so. I'll give you the pros and cons. I will give you my ultimate score. But ultimately, you're asking, is it a good game? Is it worthy of your time? If that's what you want to know, it absolutely is worth your time. And it's worth your time not because there was an abundance of narratives thrown into this game. And let me kind of make this clear. This, unfortunately, South of Midnight was marred by a lot of falsities by people in this community. No names here, folks. Where the letters DEI were uttered to try and just disperse what this game is. I'm here to tell you this. There are absolutely none. There's nothing here that suggests that DEI or that thought process um, made its way into this game. Where DEI is forced, I would have gladly said, yeah, I felt like I was having to do this, that, and the third. I didn't like this. That's not in fact the case at all. So take the stupid letters of DEI and put them out of your head when you're playing this game. It literally had nothing to do with what this game is. This game is telling a story based on actual lore from the deep south, and everything about this game that you will notice from minute one is how authentic the game is in its storytelling, in its presentation, in its character design, its music, its sound. There is a very large amount to like about this game. Let's see. Oh, K.O. Walker is literally playing South of Midnight right now. What we're going to do is, FYI, and I'm glad that this popped into my head. King David is going to be joining us next Wednesday. I'm going to try and build a panel where it's going to be, I don't want to say it's going to be a spoiler cast, but I think it's going to be a combination of people like myself, like Hargi Chani, like Kay Asante, like King David. I want to see, maybe I can even get Umbra to join us. We're going to talk about this game. We're going to give you our thoughts, our theories. Obviously, you're here for the review. We'll do that in about 10 minutes or so. Give you my pros, my cons, and my ultimate review on the game. Let's see. Why? Okay, so let's look for any other questions. The Black John says, hopefully I can finish Kazan by the time the full release. Getting my legs beat in. Yeah, that game looks dope. I didn't buy it, not because I don't have the money. I don't have the time, dude. Quan the Terrible, and obviously he says, tell us the truth. I will give you the number, brother. I will give you the number, and I'm going to break down exactly what points I took off and how many I took off. Again, I'm not being led, or this head right here you see in front of you is not turned by anybody. Not Xbox, not Microsoft, not Compulsion Games. I'm going to give this to you straight and square, like I do everything. Now, I've been accused of giving scores in the nines, which if the game is a 9, it's a 9. If the game's a 6, it's 6. We'll get to the score, but the score that I'm giving you was not debated. The score was not forced. It's what the game is. It's the amount of enjoyment that I had with this game, and I think I was very clear on what there was to like, what there, some things that need to be addressed. Um, Now, there was a question. There was a question here regarding. I don't remember who wrote it. I apologize. There was a question about, is there going to be a sequel? The game ends in a way where if there is a sequel, it can be justified. If the game ends as the story was told, it also can be justified. So it's not loosely left open. There are things and creatures and entities that you will encounter that are not killed, that could in fact come back for a sequel. There are more powerful entities, which again, no spoilers here, folks, that are the ultimate main antagonists at the end of the game that are beaten but not killed. So if they wanted to do a sequel, there is justification for seeing Hazel's powers manifest further. If there are other stories in this deep south that they want to tell, lore that we didn't see or were cut out for time, and they went to it, it wouldn't feel like a money grab. Now, the IP itself, I'm almost positive I had read this, that Netflix had picked this, that could have, again, this is just rumors, could have picked this up as something that they want to do in film. I don't know if that has come to fruition or it has not. It's a rumor that I heard a couple of months ago. I haven't been back to check on it or not, but I think that, in my opinion, having played the game for nearly almost 18 hours, that the game is absolutely worthy of having transmedia film, meaning that it could have a show or an actual film. I believe, see that the fall off right there, that's what I'm talking about. There is certain aspects, which again, this is one of the half points I took off, where as fun as the platforming is, sometimes you slip off. And I don't think it was my skills. I think it was honestly something in the game. And I experienced this during my original preview at the Microsoft experience. And I actually had said to one of the devs, is this going to get addressed? Because it seems like there was an instance where I kept falling back 3 or 4 times and I died, because they restarted you right there, so that you kind of saw. Let's see. If there are any other questions here. Why kick a moo cow? First of all, I love the name. That's awesome. It's very funny. It says perfect length. Need to do this and finish RoboCop before Expedition 33 in a few weeks. When people say, "What is your perfect game?" So for me, and I think Umbra, who might be in the chat, will agree, we prefer these massive open world things to do. Like, for instance, Assassin's Creed Shadows. It's right up Boom's alley. I'll spend 100, 2, 3, 400 hours in that game and not even think nothing about it, because I like a lot of things to do. Avowed is another example. Most people will play through Avowed and you'll put 25 hours in, and you're like, yeah, that was excellent. I got everything I wanted out of this game. It's better than I thought. The combat, this, that, and the third. I have days in that game. I make no qualms about that, because I look for everything. I love looking around for the nooks and crannies. So when you say the game is 12 to 14 hours, this is what they're saying the average playthrough is. I'm 17 and change. I had said that live on the air. Let me make sure once again. Yeah, 17 hours and 1 minute is what I'm in. That's 3 to 5 hours above what the average playthrough was. And I did go looking for things. There are achievements for finding and unlocking all your powers. I got all of those. There were a 100-point achievement for unlocking the full health bar, which I did. There are each individual level has a bunch of collectibles to find in regards to books and pages that you can read. And I know there's a lot of them. I know I missed some. There's no doubt about it, which is why I got to go back in and play this game. But just kind of going all the way back around, and apologies for the long-windedness. 12 to 14 hours. If you put 10, 12, 14, 15, 20 hours into this game, I think you're going to feel satisfied because the story is so powerful and so strong that it does literally, it's the standout of the game. The combat, you know what? We're at the hour mark here. Let me just go into my notes. And if there's a question on the back end of the show that I haven't answered, I will answer it on the back end. Let me see if I can get it to the end over here. But I want to go into my notes because I do have a detailed pros and cons here. So let me just get into that. Give me 1 second, ladies. Okay, so here we go. I'm all about positivity here on Double Barrel Gaming. You folks know that. This is why you tune into this channel, and this is why you support us in a big way, because we don't use negativity. So we're going to start with the pros, and then we'll get into the cons, and then finally the score. So the pros for South of Midnight by Compulsion Games is the story is top-notch and it's compelling. It is emotional. It is real. It is heavy. There are heavy stories here, honey, ladies and gentlemen. Heavy stories. Now, maybe they may not mean anything to you. 3 people that I spoke to about this game, other content creators, we each came away with a particular chapter that kind of hit us in a real gut punch kind of a way. This is an adult-themed discussion that you're having with these characters. There's some heavy stuff here, and if you care about story, I think it's one of the top highlights of South of Midnight. Now let's get into the sound and the music. The sound and the music, specifically the Southern drawl type of music that you would get in the South, is not only here, but I got to be honest with you, it's so good. And I don't do soundtracks. I haven't done gaming soundtracks since like way back in the days. I'm almost saddened that I didn't get the soundtrack for this on vinyl. Now, I don't know if I can get it still, but if I can get this digitally, and I believe you can download it, I'm going to listen to the soundtrack. Soundtrack is incredible. It goes one to one, and that's the thing that I want to kind of make sure that it's clear. One isn't better than the other. The graphics, which we're going to get into next, run parallel and side by side by the story. And the story runs parallel and side by side by the sound and the music. And as this story is being told, they are walking together in a way where it does put this whole thing as something that I think you're going to want to experience. The type of visuals that you're going to get here, and this is where we're getting to the graphics, are unusual. And when I say unusual, in a good way. Like, just think back to when you first saw the first Miles Morales film, Into the Spider-Verse, right? You were so, like, for me and Mrs. Boom, specifically Mrs. Boom, she was blown away by the animation on how real it felt. But it was a cartoon. That is what you get here. You get a powerful story with incredible sound and music, with graphics that you don't see very often. The stop motion cell shade, the stop motion is different from the cell shading that you saw in Hi-Fi Rush. It's different than the Unreal Engine lifelike imagery that you saw in Hellblade 2. But those two particular games on the bookends of South of Midnight used those visuals to tell you an incredible story. One was colorful and fun and funny. Another one was dark and deep and unforgiving in the way her facial animations. Well, South of Midnight stands on its own podium as something that you don't see in many games, but you will walk away by saying these graphics are gorgeous. Now, the traversal in the game, as you saw, is, I think, phenomenal. Is it perfect? It is not. Some of the platforming needs some work. We'll get into the cons momentarily, but exploring, looking for, for the hidden items, like for instance, the health gems, or trying to level up Hazel. So by the time you meet the big bad, you are fully maxed out and you whoop his ass cowboy style. Yes, the traversal is fun. It's engaging. It's challenging at times, especially at the end of each chapter. You get chased by that creature of that. Again, no spoilers, folks. You'll see what I'm talking about. Some of the platforming is spot on great. Some of the platforming, not so much. So the platforming needs work. But the presentation and the incredible amount of detail in these environments really lend to the traversal of why you want to continue to look. Like I said, you'll see the animals running around. Again, I'm only going to mention him by name. I don't want to get into the particulars because I don't want to spoil anything. There is a partner character that you find later on. His name is Crouton. Unbelievable. It's one of my cons as well. He's incredible. He doesn't have any voiced, dialogue, but the way you control him and the way that he helps you, awesome. So here are some of my cons, folks. And there are a couple. The combat is satisfying, especially when you're fighting 5 or 6 of these haints. And like I said earlier, they vary in size, strength, and speed. Some of them use other haints by controlling them, and in order to do damage to the one he's controlling, you got to get to the one controlling. So it's challenging, but it's limited. I wanted more of the move sets. There's enough that it doesn't feel like you're underpowered, but it sometimes felt a bit repetitive. Now, does that break the game? There's nothing broken in this game other than you saw the slippage, where I think they need to extend where the platforms you're jumping onto. I think that's what the problem is. Again, I'm not a designer, so I have no idea. And that's my second con. Is some of the platform needs work, especially when you're jumping from one small space to another. You saw me fall into the swamp several times, and even and again, not in this video, but one of the videos that I played earlier, there was one instance where I slipped back 4 times and just died. And that wasn't because I did anything wrong. It's because they respawned me right where I slipped off. And this is where we get into Crouton. This is a double-edged comment. Like I said seconds ago, Crouton is an incredible character. My con here is that what you do with Crouton is very one-trick pony, so to speak. You need him to get into small spaces, and those small spaces, they vary, but they're not varied enough. So that's it's a small criticism. Did it break the game? It did not break the game, but it's limited. It's kind of repetitive what you do with Crouton. And this is I don't know if this is a complaint or is it worth even mentioning? So the character itself is very interesting. And I don't know if it was cut out of the game or they didn't have time for it or they didn't think about it. I wanted more Crouton. I wanted to know more about his backstory. There's a small instance and a small explanation to how she came across Crouton, who Crouton is for her, I wanted more. He's such an incredible character. And again, it's non-voiced. It's just it makes noises. It's a doll. It's a voodoo doll. But I wanted more of Crouton specifically. So hold on just a second. Let me get back to this. So as you can see by the upgrade on there, that's what it is. There are no other pages. Once those are all leveled up, you're a powerful badass. If you go into the end of the game with half of them filled out, I think it's going to be tough for you. I'm going to be honest with you. Now, so that's just my hot take on it. But music, you're too much. Says, was Crouton in her salad? No, he was not. He's a little doll. I don't know again, I'm not watching the footage because I'm solo. I'm trying to watch the questions and the other screen I have open. So we do have we have a channel member chat from Iman Burns. He's been a channel member for 34 months, so thank you so much for that, brother. He says Nintendo turned off the chat. Yeah, they did turn off the chat because people were being, upset. There was, $8 games is upsetting. Yeah, I mean, listen, it is what it is. But thank you so much for the support, brother. We super appreciate it. But ladies and gentlemen, now we got to get into the score. So for me, I went back and forth. The game is not a 10. It is not. There are things that need to be addressed in the game, but there is nothing. The game isn't broken. If there was one, again, I have to keep going back to this. Some of the platforming is really good. Like you're going to see, like she's zipping around. Once you get this power and you're able to go back and forth, you can get to these hidden floofs. You can get to the hidden crystals. And that's great. The big boss battles, a lot of what you learn in these moves are used in the boss battles. And again, I didn't specifically get into the boss battles. It's not because they're not worthy of conversation. I don't want to spoil anything. The boss battles are great. And you are fighting some of these creatures that are as big as a screen. But again, I don't want to spoil anything. So taking into account everything I loved about South of Midnight, and I've been telling you this right now, there is a lot to love here. This is a masterclass deliverance by a studio that punched way above their weight. Is it a AAA game? It is not a AAA game. It is a AA game, but that does not make it worthy of my final score. My final score for South of Midnight is a 9 out of 10. Using this single point system, which I could have given it a half point, I took off a couple of half points, and I came to a 9. 9 out of 10. And if you play the game, you actually take the time and play the game and not play Twitter. Because I saw some comments in here, people, Boom's going to give it a 9 out of 10. He does that all the time. Well, I thought Hellblade was a 9 out of 10. I might have even given it a 9.5 out of 10. I don't remember. Hi-Fi Rush, the two games that I actually reviewed, was a 9, maybe more. Maybe I gave it a 9. I don't remember. But I know that when I play a game that gets me emotional, like I'm literally playing some of these levels, getting goosebumps because of the story that's being told. For me personally, and I kind of put myself out there a bit, the opening story is personal, where I was in tears for a personal reason. Again, some other creators I spoke to had different chapters that experienced the same thing. So their experience, along with mine, goes to show you that the storytelling in here, the graphics, the authenticity in regards to its characters, the character design, the boss level design, the platforming that does need some work is here. And it's a game that I really feel, if you are a gamer, not an Xbox gamer, not a PlayStation gamer, not a Nintendo gamer, if you are a gamer who appreciates strong storytelling and graphics and sound and traversal and platforming, this is a game that you are not going to want to miss. And I think that if you choose not to play it, that is a personal choice. I think you're doing life wrong. If you are into experiences, if you're not just a dude bro shooter, if you're just not a a gas game kind of guy or gal, and you like single player experiences, if you have been asking for Microsoft and Xbox to deliver strong single player, story driven, narrative focused games, you owe it to yourself as a gamer to play South of Midnight. That is the best way I can describe it. Thanaros drops a very generous $10 super chat that says, how long is the game? Did you achievement hunt this game? I did. I achievement hunted my first playthrough. I got 635 out of 1,000. I'm going back into it to wrap up. I want to try and get 1,000 out of 1,000 for sure. The game, I'm over 17 hours. According to Compulsion Games, they said it takes between an average playthrough 12 to 14 hours. So by the time I'm done with achievement hunting and going back in, I'll probably put another 5 or 6 hours into this game. I'll probably hit the 24-hour mark easily, because I do want to, like I said, I want to get all the achievements. But my one playthrough was 1701. But ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it. An hour and 12 minutes. I can't believe it. And I barely took any sips of water. I just want to thank everybody for taking the time. The chat's been great. If I missed your question, it's not because I didn't think it was important. It's I'm just one person. When I do these solo streams, it's super, super hard trying to do a review and watch the chat at the same time. Make sure that everything is working. Thanks, Why Kikamoo guys. It's a great job. I appreciate it. Trust me, it's tough. It's not an easy thing. I know that people like Mav do it. Dirk Griggity's really good at it. Like, he just gets on there and he just goes. And I'm learning. I know it sounds crazy that after 7 years of podcasting, I'm still learning how to speak for an hour plus. It's not easy. Like, I can feel it in my throat for sure. But I just want to say a big thank you to the channel member chat and the super chat that popped in here. Again, these things are used for so many things behind the scenes, whether it be paying for the programs that we do the thumbnails or the video editing, or even the equipment that we use to make the show run. And of course, on the back end of the years, we do a huge amount of giveaways. All of this is incredibly, we're super grateful for it. But I am going to call it here at the 1:14 mark. I want to thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen, every one of you for popping in, hanging out. We had almost 400 people here. I hope that I answered all your questions. Again, I was critical, but I'm never overly critical. I think my cons were broken down in a way where, again, is the game broken in any way? It is not. Does it need some work in its platforming? Absolutely. But I think that's about the only space in the game that needs work. Again, a small piece of criticism on the back end. You're not fighting creatures while you're looking around the world. Those fights only come the way of these arenas, which you saw me look. Most of the game is you're just, going from point A to point C to point G, and you're seeing these animals, and you are finding clues, and you are finding the floofs, and you are finding this hidden stuff. Again, I never came across as, oh, I wish there was more in the world, because there is so much to look at. I just loved every second of it. But again, folks, if you don't like my opinion, I hear you. I'm not going to fight with you. If you did appreciate the hour and 15 minutes that I'm here, giving you the live stream for the review and AMA, hit the like button before you get on out of here. Shout out to the best mod in the business, Boss Mod, Lethal Papa, keeping the streets safe from all these knuckleheads. Look, see, here you go. This is one of the health gems that you could have missed. It's in a cave, so unless you went looking for it, you're going to miss it. And at the end, you're going to want that health bar all the way maxed out. But, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for us here. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in into today's very special show surrounding the review and Ask Me Anything of South of Midnight by Compulsion Games. This has been another Double Barrel Gaming Presents. I will be back tomorrow morning on the regular scheduled program for Breakfast with Boom. Please don't miss that show. That show is going to be very, very pointed. And folks, I got to tell you, what happened with Nintendo has really opened the door in a big way for Xbox. We're going to break that down, why this is a giant Xbox win for these $80 games and a much more expensive system that we've all got. But of course, I'm going to close out the show with something that's incredibly important to me, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully one day it'll be important to you. And that's something that my dad taught us when we were kids. And he would say, Craig, treat others how you want to be treated. And also, it doesn't cost anything to be nice. You live by those rules, son. I can guarantee you're going to have an awesome day. So take care, everyone. And we'll see you next week on, well, one of the episodes for sure. But we'll be back again to do our reviews, our unboxings on the next episode of Double Barrel Gaming Presents.